Welcome. Read A Course in Miracles along with us in our home style text class. For information about our live workbook classes, email us and check out our website for more course support, including retreats at the Little Garden in Sedona.
So good morning.
Good morning. Good morning to you all. So today we're doing the Guiltless Son of God, which is section 2 in chapter 13. So let's just really get into it.
All right.
Let's have Connie start. Are you ready to? Is the kitty sitting on your book? Okay. Okay, Dale, would you start reading, please? Can you start reading, Dale?
Did you say Connie?
No, well, Connie's got the cat sitting on her book, so we'll go to you.
Oh, you want me to read?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I was already reading, I wasn't paying attention. Okay, the guiltless Son of God. The ultimate purpose of projection is always to get rid of guilt. Yet characteristically, the ego attempts to rid of guilt from its viewpoint only. For much as the ego wants to retain guilt, you find it intolerable, since guilt stands in the way of your remembering God, whose pull is so strong that you cannot resist it. You know that whose pull is so strong that you cannot resist it is really, it's there for all of us.
Yeah.
And, I can remember as a kid wondering, I didn't even know how to identify it. I just knew there was something there.
Yeah.
I can remember as far back as grade school, and I asked about it where I was attending church, and I was just told to be quiet. That's so. But yeah, it is there. On this issue, then, the deepest split of all occurs. For if you are there to retain guilt, as ego insists, you cannot be you. Boy, that is absolutely the truth. Only by persuading you that is you could the ego possibly induce you to project guilt and thereby keep it in your mind. I think the first sentence in this is really important. The ultimate purpose of projection is always to get rid of guilt. And I've never really thought of it that way. When I've thought of projection, I thought of it in the psychological terms, as I teach in college courses and that type of thing about projection, but I've really never thought of it in this regard. And I got to be honest with you, the whole thing about guilt is a concept that I've had trouble really getting my arms around, as we talked about last week. And I don't know why that is. It's been confusing for me. It didn't seem like it should be, but it has been. So that first, I guess I could use a little explanation on that first sentence.
Well, he says at the beginning of 21 that perception itself is a function of projection.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So I think that guilt is much bigger than we usually think of it as. We usually think of it as one little thing in the panoply of emotions.
Ego ideals, remember?
We'll definitely get to that. But guilt in the Course is the entire sense of I'm not good enough. So therefore I deserve frustration, disappointment, my rage is justified. All of the negativity can be seen as under the umbrella of guilt. I'm diminished. I'm just not.
So
I'm not cutting it.
So for instance, if I take a look at any situation like my son or my medical stuff or whatever, that I lost it. I don't know.
Okay. So
well, I'm reading the definition. It says rest on an inherent sense of unworthiness.
Right.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. So if I'm looking ahead and wondering if I'm going to be enough.
Yeah,
Will I be enough to meet the situation? That's guilt operating.
right.
And I
That's
don't
guilt
see it as
operating.
guilt.
Right, right.
Well, I've had that, we've all had that sense of unworthiness, whether it be in a relationship or our job or our families, whatever it may be. But that, and maybe it's not different, but to me, that seems different than the spiritual sense. Am I
Yeah,
confused?
no, the sense that guilt is used in the Course is what the ego is trying to tell you you are. It's not in relation to this, that, and the other thing only. It's your very being is guilty, according to the ego. That's
Okay.
how huge it is, how deep. And that's what this first paragraph is really talking about. It's talking about exchanging our identity from the Son of God to an inadequate, damaged being. And that's the problem. You know, that's the split. So the ego wants to get rid of that horrible feeling because it's so intolerable.
Well,
So
we want to get rid of it too.
Yeah,
It's intolerable.
because at the end it says only by persuading you that the ego is you. The ego tries to persuade us that we are egos. That's clear.
And the ego itself is a denial of the truth of who we are. That's why the ego itself just is guilt.
That's right.
It's just guilt. It's just punishment. That's your future. You got to be punished
Karma.
to pay your debt that you owe to God for your sins.
Yeah, that's right. So let's look at this paragraph again, because this section is so powerful, so juicy.
We talked about how much, if you look at this section, and it pays rich rewards to go back over it, where it's talking about what's going on in your mind. What are the dynamics in your mind? What are you assenting to? What are you resisting?
Right.
It's huge in its description of what's going on.
Right.
And we can see that.
Right. So the projection idea, just to kind of pull up some strings together about this first paragraph, that idea of projection is, it's the whole world that we see from the ego's perspective. Who's wrong? Who's bad? Who's unworthy? It's like, not me, because I can't stand being guilty. I can't stand to look at this. Maybe a little bit, just once in a while, but really it's the world. It's everybody else.
So see if you can finish this sentence. It's the first sentence in this chapter. If you did not feel guilty, you would not do what?
I looked it up. Attack.
You would not attack if you didn't feel guilty.
So we're attacking other people and situations all the time to get rid of our own guilt, to get rid of our own sense of, it's like it puts us above them. So we're not unworthy. We're at least worthy compared to them.
Right, but what the sentence said is a little different than what you said.
Oh, okay.
If you did not feel guilty, you could not attack. For condemnation is the root of attack. So that's the dynamic to see. When I'm experiencing guilt, fear of punishment, my next step is, who can I condemn for that?
Mm-hmm.
And I try and condemn the world, but I'm really just condemning myself.
Right.
I was just going to add that that one line says the pull of guilt is so strong that you cannot resist it. Obviously, we need help. We're not going to be able to do this on our own, you know.
Right. You know, if resistance to God is futile, then we're just like swimming madly upstream, where we could just float downstream to a beautiful beach, right? Thank God. Thank God that resistance to God is futile.
The sentence that struck me was 3. On this issue, then the deepest split of all occurs. For if you are to retain guilt, as the ego insists, you cannot be you.
Right.
That's the deal.
You can't be the Holy Son of God. You can't
Right.
be the Christ. You've got to be that body personality thing.
Yep.
Okay,
So is this next one where you talk
let's
about?
go. That was a good discussion. Okay, let's have Laura read next.
2.
Number 2.
Yet consider how strange a solution the ego's arrangement is. You project guilt to get rid of it, but you are actually merely concealing it. You do experience the guilt, but you have no idea why. On the contrary, you associate it with a weird assortment of ego ideals, which the ego claims you have failed. Yet you have no idea that you are failing the Son of God by seeing him as guilty. Believing you are no longer you, you do not realize you are failing yourself. So number 2, you project guilt to get rid of it, but you are actually merely concealing it. So projection, yeah, it is. I guess it's kind of like the same thing with a movie screen. You're holding on to the movie, but you're trying to make it look over there, and you still have the guilt. And 3, you do not experience the guilt, but you do experience the guilt, but you have no idea why. And that's this ontological guilt is the source of everything, right?
Yeah.
This is everything that's painful.
Yeah, it's just kind of funny because I can see myself or observe myself after, I get into like, oh, oh, look at this, I should do something about this. And it's like, why am I feeling guilty? Like, oh yeah, no, I'm just projecting that. I'm trying to let it go. So yeah, I just have to say, I find it really, and for me, I see the word weird, and I just don't associate it with the, just really odd for me to see it here. It's such a modern word. Maybe that's what, and it always just jumps off the page at me. I don't know why. It's just like, well, Jesus,
Which
really
word is that?
Weird.
Weird.
weird is weird. I don't know.
Okay, so those are the weird assortment of ego ideals.
Can I give my example?
Yeah.
So if from that sentence, ego ideals, quote unquote. So I'm worried about my son, what's going to happen to him. And immediately my mind's going to, how can I be a better father? Or why wasn't I a better father? If I'd have been a better, I'm myopically focused, self-centered, in this wallowing in guilt.
That's it.
Because the ego's saying, see, he's in a deficit because you weren't a good enough father.
Right.
And I don't even realize I'm just failing the truth of who I am by doing that.
Right. That's exactly right. So it's forgetting that we are the Holy Son of God.
Yeah.
And our love is all that's needed in any situation, unless we're called to do something, but it's so background. Who we really are is the point here. The point is we think we're an ego, and the ego has all kinds of rules and regulations. What will people think of me if I wear the wrong clothes to the affair? If I drive a dirty car? What will people think of me if I don't say the right thing to that person?
Look how she's dressed.
Yeah, really. All of that is crap. It's like ego ideals. And that's what we hang our guilt on. But it's even big stuff, like I wasn't a good enough mother. I wasn't a good enough father. I went bankrupt. I have too much debt. All of these kinds of things, those are ego ideals, and we hang our guilt on that instead of looking at what's really going on. We feel guilty because we tried to kill our awareness of who we really are. That's what it's meant by failing the Son of God.
Could I ask a question, Timothy?
Yeah.
From a practical standpoint, how do you go about healing what you just talked about? I mean, what is actually the process?
Okay. So one thing I try and remember in this context, when I'm associating my experience of guilt with my ego body ideals of who I am, I remember that the Course is saying, don't say you can't learn this course because you've taught yourself that your thoughts are not your own. They just show up. Where did they come from? And that you're not who you really are. So in that situation, I realized my ego is trying to make my sense of lack, which comes from guilt, my inability to deal with it is because my ego wants me to think the issue is about my sense of myself.
Right.
When the real issue is that at this moment, when I'm concerned about him, when I want to be loving towards him, I have to realize that in this moment, I can join with him in love. I'm not prevented from that. And it's just associating myself with this parent concept of self that's letting me not see the real source of guilt, which is I'm failing the truth of who I am. So if I on a practical level, when I'm dealing with my son right now, the worry, I just say, Holy Spirit, I'm putting him in your hands. I'm putting the situation in your hands. Let me have an experience of his forgiveness and my forgiveness. What is the miracle that will really heal my mind here? Does that help?
Yes, very much so. I have a similar type situation, so it's particular interest to me. I was just curious. Yes, it helped a lot.
Good, good.
And everybody finds their
Something
own
about that.
method. Go ahead,
The,
Connie.
the ego, how can I say this? The ego thinks that it's real, it's all powerful, it's it.
Yeah.
And it thinks, it wants to convince me that it has power over other people or other things. You know, everybody's got an ego and everybody has to deal with their own life and their ego. And everybody should do the course to do that, of course. But I mean, it's like that guilt is brought about by the ego thinking that it should be able to control everything.
Right
you
on.
know?
Right on.
Yeah.
Yep.
Is there anything else you'd like to talk, anyone would like to say about that second paragraph? Take some time and reread it, look at the sentences, see what stands out for you.
The sentence 4, on the contrary, you associate it with a weird assortment of ego ideals, which the ego claims you have failed. For me, when I look at my ego ideals, they all were imprinted pretty much from the past.
Mhm.
You know, either some situation, something happened, or something my religion said, or something my parents said, or,
Yeah,
you know, it's all my ideals come from that.
yeah.
Yep. I mean,
Yeah,
that's
right.
that's the second set of 5 lessons. I'm upset because I'm seeing what's not there. I see only the past. My mind's preoccupied with past thoughts. I don't see anything as it is now. My thoughts are meaningless.
There we go. Okay.
Sentence 3, you do experience guilt, but you have no idea why. And so it just sets up that trying to project more, you know, unless
Yeah.
you cut that cycle right then and there, you'll just keep on doing it.
Right
And
down to
it's-
the root.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Just as soon as you notice. Yeah.
Yep.
These
Very good.
principles.
Kathy, would you read 3, please?
Sure.
Give us your thoughts on it.
The darkest of your hidden cornerstones holds your belief in guilt from your awareness. The darkness of your hidden cornerstones, okay, holds your belief of guilt from your awareness. For in that dark and secret place is a realization that you have betrayed God's Son by condemning him to death. You do not even suspect this murderous but intense, insane idea hidden there. Okay, you do not even suspect this murderous but insane idea is hidden there. For the ego's destructive urge is so intense that nothing short of the crucifixion of God's Son can ultimately satisfy it. Wow. Okay, so I never thought that I had a murderous thought when I got into the course, and I kept on hearing about this murderous thought. And I remember hearing one time Wapnick said, everybody's mind is a sewer. And if you don't think it is, you're not looking, you know? And it really started me looking at that murderous rage stuff. And it's like, it's hidden, but it's everywhere, you know, and it'll be buried underneath, you know, I'm rallying for a good cause or something. And I don't know, it's just,
Right
it's
on.
crazy. It's crazy, the intensity of it.
Mhm.
Okay. It does not know who the Son of God is because it is blind. Yet let it perceive guiltlessness anywhere, and it will try to destroy it because it is afraid. Yeah.
So think about who you automatically assume is the crucifixion of God's Son. Who is that? Automatically for me, I think of Jesus. But is that what the Course is talking about? No, it's talking about
My
myself and you,
Yeah. Yeah.
God's Son.
So
Yeah.
look at, so what part of what we were talking about today when we went over this section was how much this is describing the contents of our minds. And if you look at that last sentence, yet let it perceive guiltlessness anywhere. When I'm identified with the ego, let it perceive guiltlessness anywhere and will try to destroy it because it's afraid.
Yeah.
So if I go back to my example about worrying about my son, I'm going to cling to this idea that my guilt is because I failed as a father,
Yeah.
right?
Uh-huh.
But what I don't see is the ego. When I'm identified with this body and personality,
Mhm.
I'm fighting my innocence away.
That's
I'm
right.
resisting my innocence.
Exactly.
I mean, that is thoroughly insane.
It is.
Mhm.
Isn't it great to recognize it?
Yes.
It's
So
like,
those hidden,
go ahead, Kathy.
those hidden cornerstones of guilt, those are things like something that you've considered of yourself all your life. You know, those
Probably.
guilty things where you're just not, and it's
And you know, it can be something very primal, like, I'm sorry I was born a girl.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I'm just not good enough from the get-go, right? It can be something as deep as that. Or, you know, just fighting your personality. You know, maybe you have a strong personality and in your family, everybody was like, shh, you know, so you're always cringing.
Mhm.
You get the idea that the Son of God better shut up, better get concealed, better hide in the Father because this ego has got to fight.
I mean, I could see that last sentence, yet let it perceive guiltlessness anywhere, and it tries to destroy it. I can see how I'm upset, I'm feeling, I'm afraid, I'm upset, and my ego wants me to cling to being a better ego to
Yes.
solve the problem.
That's it. That
you just
is-
don't get me.
Yeah, right. She
If-
doesn't get me now. He keeps marrying the same guy.
if we just constantly looked at where we're seeing other people wrong and pull the projection back and say, I'm not wrong for doing that. Everything is okay. I can be at peace no matter what's going on here. We're dispelling the ego. But we don't even know who the Son of God is. The ego does not know who the Son of God is because it's blind. It doesn't understand. You are the Son of God. You are innocent. You can be just the way you are. You're on your way to God. The pull of God is irresistible. You're going to make it. Everybody's going to make it. No guilt. No need to improve yourself. You're just fine the way you are. You know, there's that section, I need do nothing.
Mhm.
In a sense, that's telling you your perfection is in the holy instant, knowing who you are. Okay, Kathy read. So how about Connie?
Much of the ego's strange behavior is directly attributable to its definition of guilt. To the ego, the guiltless are guilty. Those who do not attack are its enemies because by not valuing its interpretation of salvation, they are in an excellent position to let it go. Those who do not attack are its enemies because by not valuing its interpretation of salvation, they are in an excellent position to let it go. Let the ego go, right?
Yeah.
Right.
They have approached the darkest and deepest cornerstone in the ego's foundation. And while the ego can withstand your raising all else to question, it guards this one secret with its life, for its existence depends on keeping this secret. So it is this secret that we must look upon, for the ego cannot protect you against truth, and in its presence, the ego is dispelled. So the secret is that the guilt, I'm not following what the secret is. Much of the ego stranger.
So
Is the definition of guilt that it's got mixed up? Is that the secret?
yeah, it's
Belief in
we're
guilt.
attributing our sense of guilt to a failure of our ego ideals, failure as a friend, as a healer, as a parent.
And but we just believe in guilt, period. We
Yeah,
just believe in the ego. We believe that guilt is useful.
Right, but I'm just saying, look at that second sentence. To the ego, the guiltless are guilty. So in
Yeah.
other words, when I'm trying to reach for my innocence,
Yeah,
the ego is going, no, 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 you're guilty. Look what you did or didn't do
right.
as a what?
Yeah.
As
As a
father,
role.
as a role.
Yeah.
I mean, that's where that upside down thinking that the ego has. And it's why we see perception as coming from the outside instead of realizing it starts here and then we project it. We don't see that.
You know, it says here at the beginning of 3, I'm still working on this, what is the cornerstone?
Yeah.
Beginning of 3 says, the darkest of your hidden cornerstones holds your belief in guilt from your awareness. I know we're going to be talking about cornerstones tomorrow. I mean, next week. All I can do is point it out because I don't have a real answer either. I think when we were reading it together, we thought that the deepest cornerstone in the ego's foundation is the belief in guilt itself. Let's just hold that as a hypothesis. And it's something like that.
So
Can I
well, I
share
mean, that's
something?
pretty. I mean, when it's saying those who do not attack are its enemies because they're not valuing its interpretation. I mean, for 2,000 years until recently with the Course, we believed admitting guilt was salvation. And that's what the ego wants us to believe. You've got to admit you're guilty to get free of it.
Well, yeah, we have to pull the guilt out and from the concealment. We do have to do that.
Right, like he
But
said.
we don't say we are guilty.
So he said, like in 2, you don't realize you're failing the Son of God. You don't
Right.
realize you're failing the truth of who you are
Exactly.
by believing that innocent, by saying I'm innocent as a child of God, I'm really guilty now.
Yeah.
I mean,
Connie had something to share
Yeah.
too.
yeah, Jan, it's something you said that triggered something in me about you shouldn't have been born a girl.
Yeah.
Growing up, everything I did was never good enough. I was always pushed. You have to do more. You have to do more. You're not good enough. And I always had the sense that there was just something wrong with me, not good enough. When I was about 40 years old, I was at a wedding, uncle's wedding, and the family's all talking, and they're talking about my nickname as a child, which was Buzzy. And I said, where did that name come from? And my uncle said, oh, well, your father wanted a boy and he was thinking you were going to be a boy. And so his name was Sebastiano. So I was called Buzzy. So from early childhood,
Wow.
and even in the womb, I probably heard them saying, you know, it's going to be a boy.
Mhm.
And I thought, oh my God, no wonder I've always thought there's always something not right about me. And it's like,
Yeah.
that's the ego
It is
creating.
the ego. Yeah.
That's the ego creating and, you know, believing
Yeah.
that I'm not, you know, the child of God, that I'm
Right.
something wrong.
And we all have something that
Yep.
we jumped on right away,
Right.
right away. And, you know, I know that mine was, because I have memory of my birth, it was, nobody wants me here. I'm not wanted, you know, okay. That's a core thought, that I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy. I'm not the child of God. But we all do it one way or another. We identify with the body and it is imperfect. Oh, let's get out of the ego's world.
Isn't it all related to the guilt that we have about separation from
Yes.
God in the beginning?
Yes, that's it. That's the
That
whole
is-
thing.
that is
Probably
the guilt.
before we were even thought about coming into a body.
Right.
So I think it might be.
Well, I just want to point out 4 and unpack that a little bit.
Okay.
So they've approached the darkest and deepest cornerstone in the ego's foundation. And while the ego can withstand your raising all else to question. So he's talking about from like a psychological standpoint, you're admitting, oh yeah, I was anxious or this was going on, but the real mental activity that's going on is being kept hidden from us.
That's what I wanted to show, is how the words, look at in paragraph 2, the word conceal. Then in the next paragraph, hidden. I'm probably not picking up all of these. And then in 4, secret. It's like we hide it. We hide our real sense of unworthiness, and we hide the fact that we're not the ego.
See, there's a line in the course that says, you could not have looked at you could not have really looked at your mind, because your mind's the most beautiful thing in the universe.
Mhm.
So we're not really looking, is what he's saying.
Mhm.
We're not really seeing how crazy an idea is. God loves me, but I'm guilty.
Yeah, right.
Or love is true and I'm still fearful or guilty. We're not seeing that.
I know.
So,
Okay.
so what happens to the ego when you learn to live in a state of grace or without guilt? What happens to the ego? Is that a silly question?
No, it's not. But let me give you an example of that. Think of, everybody has this. When they were young, their family had certain ideas about what things were or what they meant.
Yeah.
And you grew up and you realize that's not my belief. And you let go of that belief. And
Right.
therefore you let go of that sense of yourself. Like when I was growing up, my mother used to mock athletes and
Country western singers.
like, these people are losers, they have no depth to their life. And then I actually met one of them, and that whole idea about how I saw them was gone.
So the last word in paragraph 4 is the ego is dispelled. So it's just like what you're saying. When you no longer believe in an idea, the ego is more than a floating idea. It's like an operating system.
It's
Right.
foundational.
Yeah. But little by little, we dispel it.
So I'll give you another example. 3 days, we just had all our retreatants leave, and they were here for months, and we were, making our home available to them. And so they were gone for a few days, and I was saying my prayers, and I was saying to myself, boy, you've really been spending a lot of time alone. You're not interacting with people at all. And
Ego ideal.
yeah, I mean, it was completely insane.
Yeah.
What I was saying to myself.
Yeah. Oh, I catch myself all the time watching oneself talk. It's very helpful here.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go on. Let's see. I think it's Dale again. 5.
Just one last thing I want to say, 4 or 5. So it's this secret we must look upon.
Yeah.
It's more than just a psychological investigation. It's looking very deeply at these concepts and what we think they mean.
Okay.
There's a secret we're hiding from.
Okay.
Go ahead, Laura.
Dale.
In
Yeah.
the calm light of truth, let us recognize that you believe you have crucified God's Son.
Yourself.
Well,
Or another.
let me get this clear in my mind. I believed that I was growing up, and the way I grew up, that I had a lot of guilt because the blood of Christ and all that stuff that you're taught in churches. And that's part of it, but that's not really what we're talking about in the course. Okay. It's
Yeah.
so, I know this stuff, but it's just hard to let go of, you know?
I know.
It's so ingrained.
You know, some people like Robert Perry have suggested that the course came through as a correction for Christianity, and it's meant for those of us who were raised in Christianity and accepted all of these ideas that are now being shown to be obsolete or incomplete or whatever, and that it's meant for us former deeply spiritual Christians. You know, we really wanted to learn it. We really wanted to get it, but then at a certain point we were going like, that can't be right. And so the course came through to correct it, but it's still using those old terms so that the Son of God is us, the one Christ, the one self we all share. And killing the Son of God means not wanting to know who we are, wanting to identify with the ego. I'm an ego. Those people that I see on the news, they're egos, and so on. That's killing the Son of God.
Well, and look at that last clause in 2, because so I can't see the truth of who I am because there's this belief in punishment. So that's what he's saying.
He didn't even read 2 yet.
Well, okay, but I'm sorry.
So
Okay.
a couple,
Should I comment or not?
Well, why don't you wait till we get to that?
Okay.
Kathy, did you want to say something?
yeah, a couple days ago, the lesson for the day was it can be myself, only myself I can crucify, but myself so every time I see crucify, I think about what I'm doing to myself after that lesson.
Oh, great.
Yep.
Great. Okay. Dale, do you think you could start over, please?
Okay, let's see. Sentence
5.
2. Yeah, so paragraph 5, sentence 2. You have not admitted to this terrible secret because you would still wish to crucify him if you could find him. Okay. Yet the wish has hidden him from you because it is very fearful, and so you are afraid to find him. You know, I'm just trying to think if all this is true in my life. I think it is. I've just never thought of it this way.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a totally different way of thinking about this.
Right.
You have handled this wish to kill yourself, but not knowing who you are and identifying with something else. You have projected guilt blindly and indiscriminately, but you have not uncovered its source. For the ego does want to kill you, and if you identify it with, you must believe its goal is yours. I mean, that's all so true. As I sit here and think back on my life, it was just the very first paragraph that there's something in there that we're all yearning, but we don't know how to get there.
Right.
And then compound it with growing up in maybe an environment where you were told you were unworthy and you were guilty.
Yeah.
And it's not hard to understand why we're all so screwed up.
It's true. I know.
It really is. You know, so this is just, like I said, this is just, I mean, I get it, but I'm gonna have to process a little bit because it's also true, but it's just the way I've learned information, the way I've looked at myself, and it's all becoming clear, the sense of unworthiness. How could it be anything else?
Yeah.
And how do we correct it? And the way we correct it is by seeing others as guiltless. we
Yes,
can see ourselves as guiltless, but that's only part of the equation, I believe. When I look at all you, I have a choice. How do I see you? And
exactly.
I want to see you all as guiltless. And I must admit that there are times during the last week that's really hard to do.
Yeah.
Mm.
Some of the situations that have come up, but I'm beginning to understand that it's, if I want to progress, that's what I have to do.
Mm.
So this is why I was saying in 2, is that's all well and good to talk about what the past taught me. But
Mhm.
what he's saying is you cannot see clearly. You cannot see that it's just miracles in your mind, just forgiveness, because you would still wish to crucify him. So what does he mean by crucifying? He means punishment. And that's
Mhm.
what we believe we have to like pay off this debt of punishment. And so we punish ourselves, but we do it unconsciously.
Right.
So if I get rid of this idea that I have to be punished based upon my current state, that's what I need to drop. That's what he means by crucifixion.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes. And it also applies to when we think other people should be punished.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And like Dale is saying, I've got to share this
Right.
to know it's true for me.
Right. Right. Okay. So handle the wish to kill yourself doesn't necessarily mean suicide. It really means hiding the fact that you are the innocent, holy, powerful, glorious child of God.
How can I have peace when these crazy people are in my life?
Exactly.
How can I be okay if these crazy people are? I've got to get away from these people so I'm okay.
Projection, right? And you know that wherever you go, there you are.
Right.
So you take your guilt with you. You find somebody else
And
that's not good enough, right?
and it may be that you need to change the situation.
yeah.
It depends.
Yeah. Let's see. I think it's Laura's turn. Could you read that for us, please?
Or, oops.
6.
No, it's 5. Didn't he read? Did you finish 5? Okay, sorry.
Yeah. I have said that the crucifixion is a symbol of the ego. When it was confronted with the real guiltlessness of God's Son, it did attempt to kill him, and the reason it gave was that guiltlessness is blasphemous to God. To the ego is God, and guiltlessness must be interpreted as a final guilt that fully justifies murder. You do not yet understand that any fear you may experience in connection with this course stems ultimately from its interpretation. But if you will consider your reactions to it, you will become increasingly convinced that this is so. So let me read it again. To the ego is God, and guiltlessness must be interpreted as a final guilt that fully justifies murder.
Can I make a comment on that?
Yeah, please, because I'm trying to work that one out.
So the ego believes that it's God.
Yeah.
And it believes it's God because it believes it killed the truth of who we are.
Yeah.
And so it believes that this God was killed and gone, and yet it thinks this God is trying to punish us for violating his will.
Yeah.
And so therefore, since it's still trying to replace God, and it believes it killed God, but yet God is trying to punish them.
It's crazy. The
Right?
ego is just plain crazy.
So that's why we continue to suffer.
Right.
Right? I gotta look how limited I am by my whatever.
It just is nuts to me. I mean, when he's expressing it this way. And I think it's really important to recognize that this is unconscious,
But
that
it's deeply insane.
deeply insane, and it's deep in our thought system, in the thought system that we started out with and we learned. It's deep in there. It's just like a core value of that thought system is that you are guilty and you're God, but you're guilty, and so is everybody else, and you're going to punish everybody else with your judgments. And it's like, who wants to live in a world like that? we've just got the wrong operating system going on here. You know, it's like we can change, we can escape from this. Any other comments about that paragraph? And this is really deep, isn't it? I mean, it's going to the core of who we think we are.
So we can't really look upon the ego and guilt because it actually is not there, right? And so,
well, it's an illusion that we need to look on.
It is an illusion, but I think what I'm saying is that's why he's saying forgive, and then you will understand that guilt's not justified.
Yeah. So look at how the last sentence that Laura read and the next sentence there, it's talking about our relationship to this new thought system. Okay, so the last sentence is, you do not yet understand that any fear you may experience in connection with this course stems ultimately from the interpretation that is talking about.
The guiltlessness is guilt.
Yeah, okay, we can call it that. But if you will consider your reactions to it, you'll become increasingly convinced that it's so. So Kathy, would you pick up from that on 7?
Sure. This course has explicitly stated that its goal for you is happiness and peace, yet you are afraid of it. You have been told again and again that it will set you free, yet you sometimes react as if it is trying to imprison you. That's very true. You often dismiss it more readily than you dismiss the ego's thought system. Yeah. To some extent, then, you must believe that by not learning the course, you are protecting yourself. I think, at least at this stage, I know that I'm doing stuff to set up blocks, but I don't want to anymore, and but I do recognize that I still am setting up blocks. It's kind of interesting how split your head can be.
Recognition is 2/3 of the
is
way
key.
there.
Yeah. Learning the course, you are protecting yourself, and you do not realize that it is only your guiltlessness that can protect you.
Go ahead, Kathy.
Oh, just being in touch with it, that I'm afraid of peace and joy. I don't want to let myself off the hook sometimes.
Yeah.
That's all it comes down to.
Yeah. You're off the hook, girl.
And we don't have to wait for the benefits. That's what he's talking about, the holy instant and sharing it in holy relationship.
Right. We're off the hook. That's really great. Okay.
One thing that occurs to me is my ego is kind of saying, well, what right do you have to be at peace? I know it's so screwed up, but it happens all the time. Who do you think you are?
Yeah,
exactly.
This section has really dug into some stuff I didn't know was there.
So remember in the section just before this, where it was saying, as you look upon yourself, this is in section 1, paragraph 3, sentence 1, as you look upon yourself, judge what you do honestly. You may be tempted to wonder how you can be guiltless. Yet consider this, you're not guiltless in time, but in eternity. You have sinned in the past, but there is no past.
So it's all an illusion.
That's what he's saying. Check and see how your thinking is stuck in the past, regret, or future anxiety, and stop it.
Right.
Make another choice.
Right.
That's the part that I have to assert through faith.
Yeah.
Because I can't understand it from this standpoint.
Right. That's the leap of faith. It's like you jump. Yeah. Okay. Connie, would you read 8, please?
The atonement has always been interpreted as the release from guilt, and this is correct if it is understood. Yet even when I interpret it for you, you may reject it and do not accept it for yourself. You have perhaps recognized the futility of the ego and its offerings, but though you do not want them, you may not look upon the alternative with gladness. But Dale just said, who am I? In the extreme, you are afraid of redemption and you believe it will kill you. Make no mistake about the depth of this fear, for you believe that in the presence of truth, you might turn on yourself and destroy yourself. Yeah, it's, it's like Kathy said, at this point in the course, I believe it, but it's my ego that's always there, that's never going to go away, that's contradicting what I believe. And it reminds me of what Ken Wapnick said, that if you just got it, you wouldn't have to keep reading it. But I don't think we totally ever get it. I think, in fact, he said that, while we're in this body, we're not totally going to get it, right?
I lately have been seeing these things about dispelling the ego. And it's not just what we read today, but recent past, they've been talking about dispelling the ego. And I know Robert and Ken both say you're going to have the ego at least whispering on your shoulder as long as you're in a body, and that may be so. But we don't have to, it can be like, the TV is turned down to almost nothing.
Right, right.
And you're just not paying attention to it.
Yeah, you're hearing the ego, but you're not listening to it.
Right.
But
Exactly.
that's the whole point of the doctrine of incarnation, Buddha, Krishna, Jesus, was that just as a human being, not just being a divine being, but just as a human being, Jesus was to choose resurrection instead of crucifixion. As a human being, we can do that. And that's a really important point about it. So I think that the whole idea of the incarnation is, despite the fact that I'm human, I can do these divine things.
Yeah.
I'm not limited by my humanness.
That's exactly this unlimitedness is what he's trying to get us to. Your divine self is unlimited.
So would the deal be that as I'm going through time and I've accepted the atonement as my one responsibility, I'm still going to hear the ego try to hook me with guilt, but I'm not listening to
Pay
it.
no attention to it. Yeah. It's like there's a trashy channel on the TV.
So I think that's a more accurate statement than saying the ego will always be there, but we don't always have to listen to it.
Right.
I had someone tell me one time, and I think it makes sense, that they've just become an observer of what's going on. They just watch it and go, isn't that interesting? A guy told me that about 10 years ago. Oh, that's an interesting statement.
Yeah.
But it makes sense now in this context.
Just watching it from a state of peace.
Yeah, okay, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
See, that's the basic construct in Raja Yoga, means meditation yoga, is you train your mind not to have aversion to what's unpleasant or attachment to what is pleasant, to all things, like St. Paul, to all things be equal, right? The same response.
Okay, any other thoughts about paragraph
I think
8?
Laura has a question.
Yeah, I was just reading this paragraph, just made me think about a line from today's lesson. I think it's today's lesson. Is today's lesson only
My condemnation
nation
injures me.
injures me? And when I read it this morning, I read it and I was like, well, that's terrifying. So listen to this. It's in this vision of the sun, so brief that not an instant stands between this single sight and timelessness itself, you see the vision of yourself and then you disappear forever into God. And I was like, disappear forever into God. Oh, that's terrifying.
What does that mean?
Oh, you know what? Next week, it's going to talk about that. The fear of
Yeah.
redemption. Yeah.
And I was like, ooh, like there was something in me that had this reaction, like, that I don't want to disappear into
That's
God.
so cool, Laura, that you noticed that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that goes right back to you do not yet understand that any fear you may experience in connection with this course stems ultimately from this interpretation. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah. So
And
the
I was-
two thought systems are coming into
Right.
connection here, and we have to recognize they're not the same. Our minds really are split. We really are trying to walk on two sets of rails, and one of them goes in one direction, one goes in the other. We've got to make a choice. Oh boy, it's so cool.
Remember how much, and he built chapter 13 on 12, how much in chapter 12 it was about what's visible and what's invisible.
Yeah,
That the Holy Spirit is like the wind. He's invisible,
yeah,
but you can see the results of his
Yeah.
teachings.
yeah,
So when I'm denying my Christ self,
Right.
I've made that be invisible to me.
yeah, right.
And my whole point is to come from the visibility of myself as I'm not a body, I'm free, I'm still as God created.
Vision of Christ.
I can come into that space.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at the lives of people like Bill Wilson,
Who
he had
started AA?
he had his experience, I'm spirit, I'm free, when he really came in touch with the split mind.
Mhm.
Because he was thinking how messed up he was. And then the next thought, he wanted a drink. And that split in his mind was so vivid
Mhm.
that he had this experience, I'm spirit. And that's really important for us to see about how we can relate to the split mind, because the split mind can say, no, you better hang on to guilt.
There's that lesson in the course that says, when you realize how split in the workbook,
Yeah.
when you realize how split your mind is, I'm paraphrasing, it's
Yeah.
going to be shocking. It's going to be horrible. Pray that moment may be soon, it says. It's like, let's just get to it. Let's just look at these two thought systems and see how very diametrically different they are.
Yeah.
And how one of them we don't want, and we can give it to Holy Spirit.
And think about what it says in that, I can be but myself, I crucify, the
Yeah.
lesson just before the day. It said, when you are willing to accept the atonement for yourself, all of the power of creation joins you. All of the power of the Christ joins you and gives you its strength, because that's actually what we're freeing, is the sonship.
Well, isn't that the truth?
All of that
Yeah.
strength comes to us where I can set aside my ego beliefs.
So it's not a continuous struggle between God and the devil, like we were taught. It was like an eternal struggle between Satan and God. That doesn't make sense. It's more like dispelling a thought system, no longer believing in a thought system. That doesn't work.
In fact, he says that at the beginning of the text. The branch that bears no fruit is
Cut it down.
is destroyed. Be glad.
Yeah, I know. I talk to my fig tree about it all the time.
Well, I think for that
5 years old is bearing fruit for the first time, but I've been talking to it about what Jesus said about that.
Sure.
Okay.
Take it up with him, not me. Take it up with him.
All right. Let's reach paragraph 9. And I think who read the last one? Was that Connie? Yeah. So Dale, would you take us home?
Okay. Little child, this is not so. Interesting, little child.
Yeah.
Choice of words.
Yeah.
Your guilty secret is nothing. And if you will bring it to the light will dispel it. And then no dark cloud will remain between you and the remembrance of your Father, for you will remember his guiltless Son, who did not die, because he is immortal. And you will see that you were redeemed with him and have never been separated from him. In this understanding lies your remembering, for it is a recognition of love without fear. There will be great joy in heaven on your homecoming, and the joy will be yours. For the redeemed Son of Man is the guiltless Son of God, and to recognize him is your redemption. Your guilty secret is nothing. Man, that, and then no dark cloud. Well, there's just so much in there. Basically, it's just forgive yourself, I guess,
Yeah.
and forgive others that you think have done something to you because they haven't. My take on anything I do in life is because so many things that I've taken on, or all of us take on, seem to be so complex.
Yeah.
But when you get down to the root of them, they're really simple.
Yeah.
Pretty simple.
And I could spend the rest of my life reading this and analyzing everything about it.
Yeah.
But if I just see all of you as guiltless and extend love to you and forgive myself for my sense of separation,
Yeah.
and just relax in that Holy Spirit, that seems like the answer to me.
Yes.
Absolutely.
The only reason he's talking and talking and talking to us is to get us to that point of making
Yeah.
a decision.
Well, this has been, this whole section is just deeply rooted stuff that I didn't even know was in there.
Yeah.
So I guess that's the whole point, to build it cumulatively and get to where you're ready to move on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
So, go
Can I
ahead.
just comment about sentence 5? In this understanding lies your remembrance, where it's the recognition of love without fear.
Yeah.
So in that lesson, miracles are seen in the light. It says, miracles are seen in the light. This body's eyes do not see the light, but I'm not a body. What am I?
Mhm.
Right? And so that, so the darkness in the mind, what it's saying in those is that we're making both fear and love both be true at the same time,
Mhm.
because fear comes up and says, I'll keep you safe.
Right.
And we can experience love without fear, but based on this section, we can experience our innocence without making something else guilty,
Right.
like my parents or my past or the way the world is. I can experience innocence not by making something else more guilty than me, but just in and of itself, I am as God created me.
Right.
I'm innocent.
Right.
I don't need to make anybody guilty.
Right. And no matter what you do, what you think, how you act, you can't hurt the Son of God.
So if I'm not putting those two completely opposite ideas in my mind, then I see the light, which reveals the miracle.
Right. Well said. Quite a shocking section, wasn't it? Next week, I maybe you could read next week's in advance so that you can even get more out of it. It's pretty terrific. It's one of my favorite sections.